Most of us spend practically our entire lives chasing this idea of a good life that we've made up in our heads. Of course, there's nothing wrong with having a clear vision or a clear goal as to where you want to see yourself or how do you want your life to be like. In fact, it's quite helpful. It helps you sort out so many things. It helps you avoid so many detours and distractions in your life. But how many of us actually stop to wonder for a second, is this vision really mine? Or is this simply a product of my environment? Now, I understand that not everyone has that kind of privilege or luxury to put aside what they're supposed to do, what they're meant to do, and go down this rabbit hole of wondering whether this idea is really theirs or is this something that they derive from their parents, their conditioning, their society, their friends, and so on. But once you get into it, once you start scraping through the surface, you start to see the gaps. You start to see the kind of holes that are there in your so called plan because there's a big difference between who we are and who we want to be. And I know all of this might seem very redundant or even complicated, but it's really not. In fact, I've been doing this for a while, and I think it's a wonderful chance to figure out who I truly am. And of course, what I really want from my life. As cliche as that sounds, I feel that it's so easy to sustain your self image and, believe in yourself when things are going your way. Just like how it's super easy to be kind to others and to be happy and to love yourself and, do all of these positive things when you get your way. When things are going according to your plan and your vision of a good life, you're happy, you're kind, you're loving, you're accepting. It's all sunshine. But what happens when you're no longer in control? Who are you when everything is drowning in chaos and nothing is going how you thought it would? Who are you when life doesn't go your way? If I'm being honest, I have been going through one of those phases where things seem to not go my way. Things seem like, they're falling apart. And no matter what I do, no matter how much planning, how much effort, how much thrashing around I do, it doesn't seem to help. But once you get over that initial disappointment if things not working out according to your plan or, your vision of a good life, you start to see the reality of things. You start to see the deeper aspects of certain things. So, to do that very thing, I've been spending so much time wondering about who I am right now and who I want myself to be, what I want my life to turn out like. And this time, I am trying my best to remove any kind of externalities that may affect my decision making. For example, of course, like now I'm at a stage where my parents' validation is out of the window. And once that happens, once you get to that stage where you're not doing things to feel validated or accepted by your parents, you really start realizing how much time and how many things you've devoted simply to get a reaction out of them or simply to get in their good books or simply to get just their approval or their thumbs up for whatever you've been planning to do. But once you let go of that, I think it's sweet, sweet freedom. Because believe it or not, at the end of the day, the sole purpose of your existence is not to return the favor or not to make them feel better about themselves or even to make their existence more convenient for them. None of it. Whatever you do is for yourself, or at least ideally should be for yourself. The second thing that I feel was very important for me to eliminate as an externality was anything that could possibly control me. And in this sense, I mean any kind of substance. When we're having fun, when we're going out, we're partying, we're drinking, getting high, smoking, whatever. Whenever you're involved with something that constantly alters your reality, you don't even realize when you stop being yourself and start being just another person completely. This may happen all of a sudden, or this may happen gradually, but I felt that if I truly have to explore, who I am, I need to get rid of, or at least take a step back from anything and everything that could possibly alter my reality or how I view things or how I act in the present or in the future. So, yeah, the second thing was taking a step back from any kind of substance or anything that could possibly alter my reality. And the last and the most important thing on this checklist is to finally acknowledge and accept that being in control is a twisted myth. I think all of us just drive ourselves insane over being in control or, even getting the slightest bit of feeling that we're in charge of things. But unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. Things don't work like that because when we think that we're being in control or when we think that we're being in charge, we might feel like we can control the outcome of things. But in reality, what we can truly influence or change is what we put into something, our efforts, our inputs, our actions. That's all we can actually control. That's all that we can actually influence. Or maybe additionally, we can probably control how we react or how we respond to whatever outcome we receive. That is it. So you can spend your entire life chasing the idea of you being in charge or chasing that feeling of you being in control. But 9 times out of 10, in fact, I think 10 times out of 10, if you're doing that with that intention, your efforts are going to be in vain because you can't control the outcome. All you can control is the input. That is it. Neither the process nor the output is in your hands. So, this is exactly why I feel that this idea of someone being in control is a twisted myth and it just plays all kinds of games with your mind. So once I started removing all of these externalities, the need for validation, especially from my family, second, involvement with substances, and third, this myth of a need to be in control always, I could feel that I was starting to scrape the surface and getting at least one step closer to figuring out what I want to be or who I want to be. And of course, because this is a lifelong process, I think I don't have immediate answers. But so far, I've had two very important learnings from this process, which I'm going to share with you. So, the first learning that I've had from all of this overthinking and journaling and just introspection of sorts is that you can't be in the same place and expect yourself to be a different person. Now, being in the same place could either mean physically in the same place or also mentally in the same place. For example, if your goal is to be a more organized person, or if your goal is to be more disciplined with your life, you can't stay in a dirty room. You can't be in an unhealthy environment or, a distraught environment and expect that kind of progress to just come to you. Or another possibility here is also, funnily, something that I've seen in so many of my friends here back in my hometown, which is that you can't be in the same kind of mental space or You can't be the same kind of person mentally and expect your growth to be into a completely different person. For example, so many people around me, they are full grown adults, almost 24, 25 years old. And if you talk to them, they still seem like they're in high school. They are still stuck in that kind of a mentality. They are still stuck with the same kind of values, the same kind of ideas, but their expectations from their lives are something else. They want all kinds of success, they want all kinds of good things to come to them, but they're not willing to change their mindset. They're in the same place mentally. So, in either case, if you are in the same place, either physically or mentally, you can't expect any kind of difference in your personality. You can't expect any kind of difference in your life because you are not changing anything. As I said, the only thing that you can control is what you put into something. But unless you're doing that kind of effort, you can't just sit in some place and expect things to just fall into place. So that was the first learning. The second and the more hard hitting learning that I've had from this process is that to live a certain kind of life, to reach a certain kind of level, you need to become a person worthy of that life. I think this would be a great place to introduce one of my favorite quotes from probably the best book I've ever come across, or at least the most helpful one, which is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he writes in his book that you do not rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your systems. So, if you want a certain kind of outcome, or if you want to be a certain kind of person living a certain kind of life, for that, you need to become that person. You need to become a person who is worthy of living that life. Again, to quote the book, it's one thing to say, I'm the type of person who wants something. It's something very different to say that I'm the type of person who is something. And really, trust me on this. If you haven't read this book, Atomic Habits, I really urge you to do that as soon as possible. And even if you have read it, I think this is your sign to give it a reread because it is amazing. It is going to shift your perspective, it's going to shift your identity, and just the way you approach things in life. This book is definitely one of the biggest reasons why I have been staying sane, especially when things have not been going my way. And I don't want to sound petty or anything, but not everyone wants to be your friend, even if that might seem like it, but that's not the truth. And you know how I know this? It's because people find it convenient to be there for you when you're going through something, when you're upset, when you're grieving, when you are having a loss or having some kind of failure. People tend to show up for you more. And in that moment, you feel that, oh, this is such a great person who is sticking by me through a difficult patch or a rough patch in my life, and you start valuing them as much. But what's more important than that is looking around you and seeing who is standing up for you when you're happy, when you're celebrating something, even if it's a small win or if it's as big an accomplishment as you can imagine. That is the moment when you should look around yourself and see who is standing for you. And I mean this in the kindest way possible, in the most sincere way possible. Because lately, I've not been going through a great phase. These last few months have not been the best time for me. Everything has been falling apart, everything has been chaos, and I have been fighting with every fiber of my being to stay on top of things and not let myself collapse, underneath all of this destruction with things falling apart. So, in this chaotic roller coaster of a time, every single moment that I have where I get to celebrate a small win, or I get to experience a time when I'm happy, or share something that makes me feel positive, I want to look around and I'm going to remember whoever shows up. I'm going to remember who is truly happy for me. Because life is too short to, keep this flimsy relationship with someone who isn't really happy to see you succeed. It's too short to keep those kind of people around yourself. You just don't have that much time on earth. So, it's better to invest that limited amount of time with people, friends, family, whoever, who are actually rooting for you. And lastly, to sum everything up, I think that nothing is ever going to go perfectly. Nothing is ever going to be the way you imagined it to be. I mean, some things might be, and good for you, you're lucky. But most things don't turn out the way you expect them to be, even if it's something very basic. So, the only thing that you can control is your beliefs, your actions, your reactions. That's all. For example, I have been wanting to be independent, like fully independent, for the longest time. That includes financial independence, that includes running my own households, having my own struggles, doing things by myself, my way. But that's clearly not the case. I'm stuck here at home with my parents, still living under their roof, still following their rules, and, having to cut out pieces of my personality to make myself acceptable. And all this time that I've been here, I have been stuck with all kinds of household jobs you can imagine. Everything from cleaning to organizing to managing the help to chauffeuring to running around for things, running errands, getting things fixed, calling the carpenter, the plumber, electrician, whatever. Doing anything and everything that could possibly be involved in running a household. And initially, that made me very frustrated because why should I do all of this? Like, I don't want to. But, once I reread this book for, I think, the fifth time, and because I've been spending time on myself and trying to be more positive, trying to cause a shift in my vision, my perspective, my identity, I think I have gotten to a point where I don't see all of this as an issue anymore. And by that, I don't mean that I've just sucked it up and given into the situation. But what I've done here is, instead of putting in all that energy in cribbing and complaining, I have started putting that energy in shifting my perspective. So earlier, when I would look at all of these household tasks as tiresome, as burdensome, and basically just all kinds of frustrating, now I see it as something completely different. Because now, when I'm asked to do something, I am reminded of who I want to be. I want to be an independent person who doesn't need to ask anyone else for help. So I think this is a very good process for me to reach there. So as I keep learning all of these things, and this is a very small example, but it gets deeper than this if you think about it. So as I keep learning about these things, how everything works, how you manage a household, how you clean, how you organize, how you take time out to plan for the next few days, your meals, your wardrobe, your help, your utilities, logistics, everything. A lot of effort and planning goes into all of that. And You can't become that person overnight. And for me to be successful as a person who lives independently, I need to know all of these things. So I think in a twisted way, things are working out for me because, instead of just being thrown into a situation where I have to manage everything without knowing how to do most of it, I think I'm given the chance to learn everything beforehand. So, by jumping through all of these hoops and learning all of these little things, I think I'm eventually going to reach a point where I would finally be worthy of being independent. I would eventually reach a point of knowing enough about running a household to actually own a household. You know what I mean? So, wherever you are in your life, things might seem like they're not going your way, and sometimes they actually don't. Sometimes they just go off track, and your plan is just sitting there like a dummy. It's of no use. But I think at the end of the day, if you keep that faith, if you keep your efforts consistent, and if you keep working on yourself and you keep believing in yourself and your circumstances, even if your situation doesn't change, I'm sure your perspective will. This was episode 8 of Thought Vault Changes.